Today I'm going to talk to not just what happened yesterday at the RBA, but I'm also going to talk to the information they released with their Statement of Monetary Policy. Statement of Monetary Policy provides outlooks for inflation, where the RBA thinks inflation will be, where GDP will be, and more interestingly, where interest rates will be over the next few years. But I'll also talk to a slide which will appear in the video version of this presentation. And that's about one of the questions that I was asked last week when I did a poll for the RBA, because I did a poll not just for Bloomberg, but one for the RBA. And in those polls, what I did was I changed my view slightly for what I thought interest rates were going to do. Previously, I had been of the view that we would get a rate cut, which we could celebrate on Melbourne Cup Day. But over the previous week or so, I'd come to the impression that that just wasn't going to happen because inflation wasn't going to fall fast enough. And I changed that view to the view that there would be no rate cuts this year, 2 rate cuts next year, and 2 rate cuts the year after that. And that's where I currently stand. And so it came to me as a significant surprise that when I looked at the Statement of Monetary Policy, they had adopted as well. They had now changed their view to that view, that is to say, no rate cuts this year, 2 rate cuts next year, and one in the first half of 26, and they didn't show an outlook for the second half of 2026. But when I looked at what they were attempting to do in terms of where the other variable that I've been talking about the last couple of weeks is moving, that is to say unemployment, what they were trying to do with the level of unemployment that they forecast they were getting to, I came to the conclusion yesterday that it was really, really difficult for them to achieve what they were attempting to do in terms of interest rates with the economy they had in terms of reducing increases in unemployment. Because what they forecast is that unemployment rises from the current level of 3.9% up to a level in June, the middle of June next year, of 4.3%. And that is the highest that unemployment gets in the cycle. 4.3% in June 25, 4.3% in December 25, and 4.3% in 26. And with that, a pretty small increase in unemployment, because unemployment right now is 3.9%. With that increase of unemployment of less than 0.5%, they managed to get inflation down to 3.2% in the middle of 25, 2.8% by the end of 25, and 2.6% by the end of 26. And as a result of that falling inflation, they think that they can take interest rates from the 435 basis points where they now are down to 4.2% in the middle of next year, 3.9 by the end of next year, and 3.8 by the middle of 26. But the problem is when I look at the data of unemployment and inflation in Australia, that's really, really hard to do. And I'll attempt to look at the way economists look at this relationship between unemployment and inflation by showing a couple of bits of information, a couple of bits of data comparing those levels. What you'll see now is the short-term version of what's called the Phillips curve. Now, Phillips was a really interesting guy. Firstly, before World War II, he was a electrical engineer. He was captured by the Japanese in World War II, and together, and with a guy called Weary Dunlop. Those of you who live in Melbourne will remember Weary Dunlop's statue on St Kilda Road, just below the shrine. A very significant guy. And in World War II, in an almost movie-like thing, Phillips creates the secret radio, which Weary Dunlop can get information about the outside world and talk to his troops and keep their morale up and when they're prisoners of war. Terrific. So, but after the war, what he becomes is he studies economics. He becomes a professor at the London School of Economics from 1958 until 1967. And he invents a thing which economists call the Phillips curve, which is the relationship between where unemployment is and where inflation is. And there's two versions of this which the RBA use. And there's a short-term version, which is the slide you'll see on this presentation, and a longer-term version in which I'll just talk about the data. Now, in the short-term version, what I've done is I've looked at the data between unemployment and inflation in Australia since 2019. And in the slide, what you see is that there is a point where during that period since 2019, we actually get to the inflation target that the RBA wants to get to 2.5%. And that occurs when between July and September 2021, when unemployment is moving between 4.5, 4.6 and 4.7%, that is to say, an average of 4.6%. Now, just on that short-term data, that level of 4.6% is higher than where the RBA thinks, than the 4.3% that the RBA thinks will be enough to get inflation down to 2.5%. But we've been through a very unusual period in history. Let's go back and look at longer-term periods of recent history and that relationship between the Phillips curve between unemployment and inflation. If we go back to 2005, what we find is the average level of unemployment. Let's take the median level of unemployment. The median level of unemployment in Australia since 2005 is 5.2%. 5.2%. The average is a touch lower than that. And the median level of inflation is 2.4%, which is pretty much exactly where the RBA wants to get to. So the problem is that in the short-term data, the level of unemployment is about 0.3% short of where you need to get inflation to the RBA target. And in the long-term data, it's a lot more than that because the median level of unemployment over that period is 5.2%. So what I think is actually going to happen is that the RBA is going to get employment up to where the data says of somewhere between 4.6% and 5.2% to get inflation down to target, because that's what the data shows. And so what they're going to do is, I think they're going to be sitting there for a long time with rates where they are, unable to deliver any kind of rate cut. There are possible exceptions to that, like they're sitting there at the current level for right through next year, and rate cuts in other places lift the Aussie dollar and therefore decrease import prices. But I think in general, what they're attempting to do is something that hasn't been achieved any time in the recent data. So I think they're going to have a lot of trouble reducing interest rates even next year from the current level of 435 basis points.